Not going to get their windows approved tonight.
I go online so I can see. It is.
Yep.
More than.
Right. Good sign. We're live and recording, Carrie and Gary. Thank you.
Hi, Hector. Okay, greetings and welcome to Chelsea Land Use Committee, the Chelsea Land Use Committee. My name is Carrie Keenan. Greg Morris and I are the co-chairs of this committee, which usually meets monthly, and this is our January meeting. Happy New Year. I will not say it again. MCB4 has a hybrid meeting policy that can be found on our website. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or an extraordinary circumstance. Excused members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Members who are joining by Zoom must leave their cameras on. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on our YouTube channel and a transcript is being recorded. Please remember that we must all treat each other with respect and decorum. Assuming if no one else is coming, I don't need to read the rest. But I want to remind everybody that we do get asked to leave this space by 9 p.m. So we have quorum, and I'm going to start by saying that we all apologize, even though I said we're not going to apologize anymore. We all apologize for the Dropbox malfunction. It was there, and then it wasn't, and now it's back. So if people are struggling to access documents, please refresh your Dropbox. Everything is in there, and by everything, I mean the MDA, the three letters of response to our questions. Well, apparently they go back longer than even I remember. And our 2 LPC applications for tonight. And everything else is always there. So to that end, our agenda is 2 LPC application presentations tonight. And then we expect to use the majority of our time for old and new business as we report out to the committee. Our conversation with our elected officials. So we're going to start with LPC. We hope they can do it quickly. Our briefings, which Pamela and Dave, Greg, and I attended, were very fast and uneventful. So hoping that that can happen again. And we'll start with the application for window replacements at 318 West 22nd. Oh, sorry, that was you. That was Greg. Sorry. And over Greg.
We had a briefing on that on January 16th. David, Pam, Carrie, and I attended. LPC application window replacements 318 West 22nd. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, I should say. My name is Matthew Cordone. I'm the architect for the project, and we are in the process of replacing the windows at 318 West 24th Street. And this time I'd like to share my screen.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Correction, 22nd Street.
Sorry, 22nd Street. Apologize. It's been a long day for me. After the holiday, these Tuesdays always tend to kind of wreak a little havoc. So apologize for my misspeak. But I just wanted to give a little background of the building, 318 West 22nd Street. It is in the Chelsea Extension Landmark District, which is the reason why we are presenting to you, and eventually we'll be presenting to the Landmarks Preservation Commission. The building has windows on the front and on the back. The 2 windows that are in question reside in the back of the building. They face the rear yard, and they are not seen from the street or from any public view. The 2 windows that are in question are considered significant windows by the Landmarks Preservation Commission, hence the reason why we are presenting to you this evening. The first window is a fixed 50 light window that sets in the back of the building, which we want to take out and turn into a double door French door window so that we can access the backyard. The drawing that's in front of you shows where my cursor is, shows the 50 light fixed window and the proposed double door, the French door with multiple lights and a transom that matches and mimics the original design. The second window in question is this Oculus style window that's on the ground floor. This ground floor window will be replaced in kind. However, because the Landmarks Preservation Commission deems this a significant window, we still need to present it to you all in this presentation and eventually to Landmarks Preservation in their public hearing. Now, this elevation here is a close-up showing the proposed door and the replacement window. But to give you a little bit more background, the scope of work is basically, as I had mentioned, it's window replacement all around. We're going back in kind. We're doing the 6/6 divided light windows in the front of the building. We're doing the 6/6 divided light windows in the back of the building. The only window that we're changing is that fixed glass window, which we're turning into the double door. And if you see in this section here, you'll see there's also a proposed back deck and staircase that goes into the backyard. The reason why we are putting this in is because in the plan, the hotel's kitchen and dining area is in the back here. So this gives access to the roomers to get to the backyard on the warmer months and to enjoy, some fresh air. This is really a straightforward project. There's not much I can talk about this that can expand any more than what I've just described. But if you do have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Again, we're really just talking about two windows that you can't see from the street. You can't see from any public angle. One we are replacing in kind, and the other one we're replacing to make a better program for the building. But we're still, I believe, in my historic preservation and restoration approach, that we're keeping in the spirit of the building. And as I say that, I want to share with you the image of the existing and the proposed of that backyard. Okay, so here are the two windows that we're talking about, drawings 5 and 7. We have the existing rear elevation as it lives today, and this is the proposed on drawing 7. The oculus will remain the same. The fixed window will become a French door style glass window with divided lights to keep in the spirit of what we're replacing. Does anyone have any questions?
The committee first. Dave, go ahead.
Matthew, I understand that because it's curved, the round window automatically is considered sensitive by landmarks. Can you tell us why the 50 light window is as well, since it's on a rear facade and not orbital?
It was determined by the chief of our landmark staffer that this is a unique window. The building was built in 1874. In 1949, there was an addition put on the back of this building, which is this little bump out. These windows are historic to the 1949 addition, and I believe that is what's triggering this being a significant window. Although it wasn't original, it is certainly built and constructed with the traditional means of a 1949 window, which would be glazing putty, wood, single ply plate glass, and that is really what's triggering why LPC wants us to present to you in a public hearing and present to them.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee or questions from the committee in the room? Questions online from the committee? Yes, Pam. Pam's got, I see a hand up. Pam, go ahead.
Thank you. So I think this is a very well-planned project and a very sensitive way to deal with it. I'm curious about a couple of things. On the rear facade, the window that's being replaced is 50 light, and it dates from 1941, did you say?
of 1949.
49. Well,
Yeah.
I hope that it finds a new use and a new life somewhere instead of just winding up in the container in the street. That was one thought. On the street facade, I forgot to ask in our pre-meeting meeting, are there, and you did say that this is a refenestration that is brick to brick. I'm curious to know if there are wooden shutters at the parlor floor or anywhere else on the street facade, and if so, will they remain in place or be reinstalled?
That's a very good question. I have some photographs of the existing exterior. There are no shutters on this building. Hang on, this is the rear, as we talked about before. And let me get to the finicky little presentation here. Wants to go faster than I want it to. Let's see. Okay. Here is where my cursor is. This is the side view of the building. There currently are no shutters. I do have a better photograph. Let me zoom out a bit. Take a look at it. Yeah, this is a better photograph over here to the left and also to the right, the zoom, which would be images 5 and 6. There are no shutters. We do want to go brick to brick because it gives us the opportunity of getting the light and air that the building wants to have in. And retrofit windows, unfortunately, really don't carry the profiles that we're trying to look for.
They certainly don't. No, that's in my opinion, the best way to do this kind of treatment is to go brick to brick, and it gives you much more light area. The windows that are being replaced on the street facade, are they original windows from the what did you say? Or are they replacement windows in themselves?
They've been replaced in the past. They're not original to the building, but they did carry the same spirit of the, I apologize, I said 6/6. They're actually 9/9.
And they're wooden sash.
And they're wooden sash.
Oh, but they are not old enough to be glazed with historic glazing.
That's correct. Yeah, they don't carry the historic significance for us to reglaze in place. And also in addition, part of the program is that we're trying to get this building more energy efficient. So we have.
I understand. Building. You're going to insulated glass.
That's correct. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what is the dimension, the gap between the insulated panes? Is it minimal or is it broad?
Well, it's the standard Marvin window heritage system, so it is a narrow profile. It's still giving us the solar gain efficiency that we need and the U value that we need. It measures out to, I believe it measures out to 3/8 of an inch in terms of thickness.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the information.
And we do have sections here that do show in scale what these windows do look like.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
You're welcome.
It's online from committee members. Okay. Community, in person, online.
So the motion to approve, this is very non-controversial. I think it's okay.
Is there a second?
Say,
Oh, sorry.
you got it. You're doing great. Yeah, sorry. Keep going. Keep going.
Unanimous in the room. Everybody online, did you hear the motion?
Couldn't hear you.
Oh, there's a motion to approve and it was seconded here in the room. Is folks online, did you all for that approval as well?
Approved. Is that, you want my hand up? There you go.
Thank you, Kitty. And thank you, Marty. You.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Great. Thank you, folks. Have a wonderful evening. And I look forward to restoring this building for you all.
We look forward to seeing it restored.
Take care. Have a great evening.
No, carry forward.
Since I took over.
Go ahead.
Do the vote.
Sure.
The second application, LPC application for amendments to the signage master plan at 261 11th Avenue, otherwise known as Terminal Warehouse Building. We had a briefing for this project on the 14th. We've had a busy month. Again, Dave, Pam, Greg and I attended. And,
Not me.
okay, Greg did not. I did, Pam, Dave did. And I can't see who's presenting.
Oh, can you hear me? Sorry, I already shared the screen. Hi, I'm Jonathan Taylor with Higgins Quaysbarth and Partners. So I'll be presenting. I'm also here with Simon Willett of Cook Fox Architects and my colleague Cass Stackelberg. So if it's possible for them to be promoted as well, just in case they might want to add a response.
Cass?
Yeah, and Simon is coming over now.
And Simon's coming over now. Okay, Simon is here as well.
Hello. Good evening.
So anytime you're ready to present.
Okay, great. So I shared my screen. You can see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for having us again. My name is Jonathan Taylor with Higgins Quaysbarth, and I'm here with an update to one aspect of the terminal warehouse project that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and that is some revisions to the approved signage master plan. The overall project, this overall project was before the committee in 2019, and it was approved by Landmarks in January 2020, in other words, right before the pandemic. So it is being completed in a very different world, specifically a very different commercial real estate context than when it was first envisioned. And consequently, there are some changes to the program. For example, a large food market hall that was once envisioned for the ground floor is no longer part of the plan. And so we have some updates to the signage options to be available to an anchor tenant that are designed to be closely in keeping with the history of signage on the building, which is significant. And in fact, here in this view of the 11th Avenue facade, we can see the historic metal lettering across the facade and the arched entrance. Just a quick snapshot of the project in progress. As you probably remember, it includes a significant rooftop addition on the west end of the building, but also a major restoration across the whole building, including restored shutters to all the windows, almost all of which were missing. Restored windows matching the historic configuration over most of the building, many hundreds of windows, restoration of the vast amount of brick masonry, as well as the existing decorative metals, including, again, historic metal lettering. Terminal Warehouse is the largest footprint in the West Chelsea Historic District, accounting for about a quarter of the lot area. And it has, I think, about 3 acres of brick masonry. So as I said, the 2020 approval included a signage master plan for the building. So I just want to quickly summarize, overview what is approved already on the facades of the building. This is the 11th Avenue facade. We're not proposing any updates on this facade, but you can see at the ground floor, it includes options for signage at storefront establishments on the ground floor, as well as building entrance signage around the arch. On 27th and 28th Streets, also more ground floor storefront signage on the approved new canopies, as well as 2 vertical blade signs that were shown as located in the middle of the block, and those were intended to be oriented to the food hall that was then planned. So that's similar on both 27th and 28th Streets. And then on 12th Avenue, again, ground floor signage and building signage around the arch. And I'll just note right now, because it's relevant, that what was approved to be over the arch where there's not currently any signage was lettering that would say Central Stores, in other words, building ID signage there. So I'll start with maybe the most straightforward or simplest update, which was for the vertical blade signs on the 27th and 28th Street facades. And that is simply to propose 2 additional potential locations where they could be located. No change to the size of the signs or the number of them that would be on either facade, just additional places where they could be located. So on top, you see the approved locations in the middle of the block. At the bottom is the new proposal, which adds these 2 other potential locations closer to 11th Avenue. And so the signs could be located in any one of these 4 spots, but again, no change to the total number or to their size. And on 27th Street, sort of a similar idea. The 2 new options are towards the corners. And so in both of these cases, these signs were originally associated with the market hall. Now they would be more like wayfinding signs towards building entries near the corners. And just some renderings to show what this would look like from the street. So this is the rendering of the originally approved locations on 28th Street. You can see them down the block. If they were placed in the newly proposed locations, they would be here on this street. On 27th Street, again, you see them down the block. From 11th Avenue, you would see one closer to the corner here. And then 27th Street and 12th Avenue, again, the approved locations in the middle of the block. And now seeing one of them closer to the corner. And then, of course, the other thing you can see here on this proposed rendering would be the other piece of what we're bringing to you tonight, which would be additional options for tenant signage on the 12th Avenue facade. And so I'll move along to that right now. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about the history of building signage on Terminal Warehouse and as part of the character of the district. This is an original view of the 11th Avenue facade from the completion of the building. The signage at that time over the arch, it was applied metal lettering and it said Central Stores. The building was associated with the New York Central Railroad, which had tracks, as you can see, that ran through the building. But it was owned by a Terminal Warehouse Company. And so by 1904, those letters, this is the same side of the building, were changed to say Terminal Stores instead of Central Stores. By 1912, you can sort of see at that angle that the rest of the letters on the 11th Avenue facade had been added, saying Terminal Warehouse Free Bonded Cold Storage on the upper facade. And of course, this view also shows you some of the other kinds of painted and panel and flag and other signs that would have been characteristic of the district at the time. Also about this time, there was a plan to expand the 12th Avenue side of Terminal Warehouse, which did not get carried out as shown here. But as you can see, this rendering from the time showed a very large similar sign of lettering on the 12th Avenue facade, sort of facing the river. And I think, as we'll see in a couple more photos, this is a sort of a characteristic in this district of signs on buildings that were facing the river, large-scale signs that were oriented to the waterfront and to river traffic. And then as time went on, just a few other images of tenant signage on the Terminal Warehouse building. This is a large panel sign on the north facade for Francis Liggett, a big grocer tenant for a long time. Francis Liggett also had lettering over the 12th Avenue arch, as we can see here. It's a little bit more of the same in context as I was talking about the major visible signage facing the river. Similar images. The B&O building had very large signs again facing the river. And as you get to 1940, Liggett and one of its brands, Premier Food Products, they continued to have their lettering over the arch, as well as a large Premier Food Products mounted lettered sign on the upper floors of the 12th Avenue facade, and additional signage here on other sides of the building. Later on, the building was painted. Those signs were still there and painted a different color. Additional painted signs were part of the building paint scheme, and the building was repainted with additional painted signs over time until the recent project. Comparing the approved and proposed of the 12th Avenue facade. So the two things we're talking about today are that there would be a new zone on the upper floors of the 12th Avenue facade, similar to what you saw with the historic Premier Food sides, a zone for lettering for a tenant in that same area, as well as at the arch where there's already an approval for mounted lettering that would just say Central Stores, allowing that zone to also be used for tenant lettering instead of saying Central Stores. And I should say that there never was historically a Central Store sign that we know of on this side of the building on the arch. There was only, we know the history of tenant signage of the Francis Liggett. And we did meet with members of the committee for the briefing here. And I do want to say that what we're showing tonight has some updates from what we showed to the committee that are sort of in response to some of the concerns that were expressed. And so one of those is that instead of what we showed before was a scheme of mounted letters in both zones. And so what we're proposing tonight is actually an optionality within the master plan for 3 different types of signs, one of which is mounted letters. So I'll go through those. So this is the first option, which would be for individual pin-mounted letters, both over the arch and on the upper facade, as well as a linear indirect light fixture below, which would feature in all 3 types. These letters would be modeled in scale, materiality, finish, and depth on the historic terminal warehouse and other lettering signs on the building, as you can see here in this image. So what we showed the committee members earlier was the possibility of sort of thicker letters. These would instead be limited to 1 inch thick, and that allows them to have smaller mounting, like a pin mount, 4-inch screws instead of through bolting, which we showed before. So that reduces the impact on the masonry. The second option would be in the same zones and sort of the same size and color parameters to have the tenant to use painted lettering instead. And it would only be lettering, no backgrounds, no borders. And again, though, with a indirect lighting fixture. And then the third option would be letters mounted onto a pair of rails. This would allow for thicker letters, somewhat like we showed originally. And instead of each being mounted to the facade as we previously showed, they would be mounted to the rails. And so the rails would be through bolted into the facade, but with fewer penetrations than on using every letter, and then the letters could be switched out with the rails remaining on the facade. And so those were the 3 methods now. And so we think that, we're showing a version of mounted letters that has less impact than what we showed before, showing the painting option, which I know is something that the community and Landmarks preferred for the recent project on West 26th Street that's pictured here, as well as the rails option, which is something that the committee members we went with also suggested might be a preferable approach. So, those are some moves we made, hoping to respond to those concerns. And then these just spell out some of the other parameters, the size of the letters, limitation on the colors. As I said, no borders or backgrounds, all things that I think will keep the signage more in keeping with the historic signage that is, characteristic of Terminal Warehouse. So,
And if I could just add, thanks, Jonathan. If I could just add, I'm Simon Willett. I'm with Cook Fox Architects. I've been working on this project for 6.5 years, and seen the entire transformation from kind of a neglected warehouse building that was partly empty and being used for self-storage into what really is Class A office space with a potential for a very lively ground floor component. But really key to the overall success of the project beyond the architectural transformation is going to be landing the right tenant. And I cannot understate how important it is to this building in particular to realize the potential for signage on this facade like there was historically, to land the right tenant and to really bring the building to life. So, we met with some of the members of the committee and we're trying to be responsive, presenting some options. Obviously, we don't know exactly who the tenant's going to be. There's people in mind, but nothing's been signed yet. So, and obviously things could change over time. This is a master plan that will be in effect for decades to come. So giving the right parameters to allow a tenant to express themselves while being respectful to the architecture is very important to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you both for that presentation. I will just say for those who don't know, one of the main concerns is that when you have signage for tenants, tenants change. So the more the tenants change, the more holes that go into the buildings when you mount these signs. So as a obviously landmark historic building, there's some concern that the building could end up being damaged by the repetitive nature of changing of the signs. That was what came up mostly at committee. Does anyone have any questions, Paul?
So Carrie, that actually was something that was running in my head, is that if we were to approve signage on the building, then the tenant changes, they have to come back and they're gonna request additional changes. So it seems that the track signage seems to be the most friendly to that, like one installation, and then as tenants change, the signage would change. The question I would have though is on that, would there still also be some constraints on the font formula so that we don't have a Google logo, a Twitter logo, a Facebook logo that changes, and sort of the historic character of the building is almost diminished by golden arches? And I'm wondering if there's any proposal on keeping the font similar, no matter who the tenant is, rather than branding the building by the tenant name.
Well, I think Simon will be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but under the proposal as it's structured now, there are the three different options, and so some of the parameters here limit the size of the letters. It limits the colors to either grayscale or other words, white, black, or gray, plus only one other color. And Simon, is that correct? So the less than 15% is that the non-grayscale color could only be up to 15% of the lettering.
Yeah, of the overall area of the sign.
Right.
And this
so
is
that, in other words, there would not be
looking at-
like garish coloring, because it's basically, grayscale plus one other color can only be used a little bit, or natural metal finishes. And it's only permitting letters and not logos. So these are things that I think, but it's not restricting the font. But these other restrictions, I think, are things that keep it sort of materially and in terms of finish, in keeping with the historic signage and not allowing for sort of outlandish things.
Anyone else? We're gonna do in the room first.
Okay. Did you consider a solution where you applied letters to the lighting rail? Effectively, it would be letters on a rail system where the rail would both hold the lighting and support the letters.
Simon, do you want to speak to that? I don't know how that, logistics of that.
I think that would be a variation on the kind of rail theme. The concern there would be that by adding the weight of the letters entirely to the lighting rail, the penetrations would be that much bigger, because the moment resistance would need to be much greater. And we were trying to limit the uplighting product to what has already been approved for the 11th Avenue arch, which really is only supporting its own weight. But I do see your point, and that is something that's a possibility.
Now includes a separate lighting track below the lettering, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And
yes.
And the attachments for the lighting track would be every 4 feet.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarity, because this is a master plan, tenants could change and the lettering could change without your coming back to us, correct?
Yeah, for anything that meets the defined parameters, it would be approved by landmarks under the master plan and not be coming back.
Okay, I took a walk past the
I can't hear you.
Can't hear David.
Do we, one mic? Yeah, hang on, one sec. We only have one mic. We were hoping the ceiling mics would do it, but hold on. Let us know if you're having trouble hearing the room. Thank you.
Yeah, I took a walk past the building and, I was concerned about what the condition of the brick on the west facade is. If it's in pristine condition, what kind of kid gloves do we want to take to it? And it's a little bit appalling, the condition of the brick. It's been really sloppily repointed in some places. A lot of bricks are missing. There's a lot of cracking. There's evidence of saw cutting of masonry joints, which I'm sure you all know is a real no-no in terms of preservation. I don't know if that happened before you were involved in the project or not, but simply before finishing today, I'd like to make sure you're aware of it and maybe call it to the attention of the owners. I'm sure you're very committed to an excellent preservation project. And with that, I'll pass it on to questions from Pamela and Betty.
Well, are you calling? Is someone calling on me? Yes. Yes. Oh, okay. Two questions that are different. One is, since the food market, I guess first floor area is now been taken away from the project, is there something else that's replacing it? And I'm a little confused about the signage, but let's do the food question first.
Simon, do you want to describe the?
I'll take this one. So the original programming idea for the ground floor, and I don't know how familiar everybody is with the building. That there was the train tunnel that ran all the way through the building with stores on either side. And the thinking now is that train tunnel is going to serve as a large public lobby connecting, semi-private lobbies in the building up to the office floors, as well as a ground floor retail component. There's also a courtyard in the center of the building that was carved out to bring light into the building and create access to outdoor spaces. That's how we were able to do the area transfer for the addition on top from a zoning perspective. But around that courtyard at the ground floor, the intention was to have a food hall. So this was in 2018. It seemed like a very good idea at the time. Now, 7 years later, the west side kind of has a glut of these food halls. So the thinking now is that instead of a food hall, there will be a series of restaurants, by one operator but with different themes. So it'll be kind of a fine dining Mediterranean themed area, a bar, lounge, and then a brasserie. So still a food and beverage component, but not the same kind of in and out public nature that you might have with a food hall. So they're not the kind of tenants that we think would warrant a blade sign. Whereas now the focus is much more on finding anchor tenant for the office floors who might be interested in having a blade sign directly over the lobby instead, which is why we're proposing to relocate some of those signs as an option.
Thank you. I look forward to those restaurants. Dealt with this project for a long time. And then in terms of the signage, is there also going to be signage on the ground floor? Like these pictures that you have here look like the signage is way up high in the air, or am I wrong?
Correct. The existing master plan provides for signage at ground floor sorry, I'm going to just scroll back on all the elevations, and so that's the established current master plan that's in effect. And so we're here with the specific changes we're talking about, which just have to do with the vertical blade signs, as well as the changes at those specific locations that we were talking about, the upper floor zone and the 12th Avenue arch. But these yellow areas on the elevations, those show what the ground floor establishments have options for in different locations. And the green are their signs on the canopies. But that's all part of the existing approval.
All right, so that's that. So go back to the picture that has these different fonts.
Yeah, so that page with the 3 images was showing what we're proposing tonight. We're proposing that
Yeah.
in this one location, these are 3 different ways a tenant could get a sign approved in this one zone, which is on the upper floors of the 12th. So we're of the 12th Avenue facade. So these are showing the 3 possible types.
So it's sort of like a menu. They could
It's
do one of these fonts.
Well, they're not just fonts, they're different types of signs. So the first one are metal letters, just like the existing ones that are attached to the facade. The middle one is a painted sign, and then below are letters that are mounted onto a track, and the track attaches to the facade. The letters attach to the track, and the letters could be changed out with the track never moving. So, so there are 3 different physical types. Yeah.
So any particular business could pick one of these 3 approaches. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And so therefore it could be different fonts on different levels. Is that right?
Well, there's only, I mean, this is there's only one,
Only one layer?
well, only one place that this can happen. So like in this upper floor zone, there's only ever going to be one sign, and there's not going to be others of this that are up high on, anywhere else on the building. So there's just going to be one there. It is true that it could be different from what's over the arch, like as shown here. Like this is showing the metal letters of the arch. It's showing the rail letters up there. This one is showing, there's different permutations. This is showing paint in both locations, but these are the only 2 places where you would have anything. So there wouldn't be like
Okay.
a bunch of combinations, all, more than these 2 locations.
Okay. All right. Okay.
If you go to page, sorry,
Yeah.
on page 37, we're showing the 2 zones.
So this is, these are
So there's over the arch, where there's already approval for building signage over the arch, and the ask is, can that change to tenant signage? And then there would be the block letter zone at the 5th and 6th floor, there on the right hand side of the arch.
Okay, I think that's clear. There are no high signs where the addition is the glass
No,
thing.
yeah.
Okay.
No, there is no, per zoning, there is no signage permitted above 75 feet
Okay.
on 12th Avenue.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Pamela?
Okay, so as per our conversation in our pre-meeting, I have a preference for having this 12th Avenue signage over the arch to represent the building itself and not a tenant. I would love to see it painted as in the example that it is shown in your presentation. I think that's how it must have been originally. I would go for that for sure. As far as the signage on the upper level is concerned, that will need to be changed with the change in tenants. I think, again, a single track mounted there securely with the lettering, metal lettering mounted on it would be just fine. In your sample of the 3, I think the top one of the 3 was by far the preference for the font, at least. I think you said that someone said that the single track might not be sturdy enough to support both the lighting and the lettering. Yeah, the topmost one that says block text, that lettering seems to me very appropriate for the building. But I do think that the single track holding the lettering could be made secure enough to carry the weight of the letters. It's sheer. It's not as though it was hanging off out in space. It's the weight is sheer. So I'm sure there would be a way to find a way to make that work properly. I know that means through bolting in a couple of locations, possibly 4, but that would certainly be my preference. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela.
Just in case you can't hear me, I want to be clear. From what I understand, there is no control over the font, correct?
I mean, as proposed here and described here, that this doesn't define, this proposal doesn't define or dictate a typeface.
My
Okay.
comment about the font was simply that I have a preference for that one. It's not, I know that it's not locked in.
Yes, I'm just saying that because multiple people have mentioned liking one font versus another font, and it could be any font. So I just want everyone to know that. The second thing I have when you came to the briefing, it was 1 option, now it's 3. I'm a little worried about that because it feels like now we could have signage and rails in all different places. Well, I need maybe Dave to tell me that it's better to have that than not, you know?
Well, if I could just respond, I mean, I have a preference for the slab serif font as well, the type that you see on the building currently, and I think it would look best if that was the typeface that was used. But I have to respect the reality that over the life of the building, many different tenants will be looking at this, and some tenants are very much associated with a particular typeface or logo, or sorry, not logo, but you think of like Bloomberg. I mean, the Bloomberg is not looking at this building, by the way. I just want to make that clear. But Bloomberg is very much associated with a kind of font that would look a little strange if it was in slab serif or something. So we don't want to write in a limitation, but I do respect the fact that I think it would that is appropriate given the text on the other side of the building. That said, the only historical precedent we have for signage on this side of the building is different. I mean, we have a number of different fonts that were used on this side of the building, and in this particular area, a rather significant departure from the slab serif. So we need to respect the fact that tenants like this have been in the building before and might be interested in this kind of opportunity.
Right. I think, I want to just, second that the variety, a little variety, was a character of the signage on the building in the past, as we can see here. Again, within a certain sort of signage type and materiality, family, that we're trying to maintain. I think also that the concern was being expressed was maybe about the optionality and that we're talking about now in terms of types and how that would play out over time. But the intention here, I think, was to provide multiple ways that we thought were each of which was sort of address the concerns that were each of which is sort of better than what we showed you before.
I appreciate that. That's my question, really, just to clarify.
Can't hear you.
Okay. I don't think the mic is there.
So start over.
Sorry. Just to clarify, if we're not going to say we should only paint and we're giving more options than one, are we actually creating more opportunities to put more holes in this building? That's my question. Does that make sense in a really simplified way?
I think our letter to Landmarks can say we're primarily concerned about reversibility and not putting any more holes into the facade of this building than need to be put in. And when you take into account that this is a master plan and there will be a series of tenants going forward who might want to add more holes to the building, you know, each time they change the lettering, that is what we would like to avoid. And if the signage over the arched opening is simply building identification, there would not be need to change that down the road. If the signage to the upper right is going to be changed, then we would want that to be on rails so that it can be changed without altering the number of penetrations. And I think we could pretty safely say we would like those rails to incorporate the lighting to minimize the number of penetrations. As far as golden arches up there, you know, we've been told that it's simply going to be a logo type, which is a typeface that becomes the company's logo like FedEx rather than a symbol that would be up there. And, you know, that is so much a part of doing commerce. I kind of would be a little bit reluctant to impose a typeface on it. Whereas if the building identification sign over the arch is permanent, that might relate to a historic precedent. And I'd like to make a motion that that is what we propose. Sorry. Oh, one more question. Sorry.
All right, sorry. It came to me after conversations that within the proposal that I read online, I thought there were pennant flags on the 11th Avenue side of the building. Are those, because you said there's no flags or pennants on the 12th Avenue side, but are there pennants for the 11th Avenue side? They looked like they were in the original presentation I read online.
The master plan includes
That image there.
that this one flag that's in the location of what we've seen in historic photos for a pennant there. Simon, is there any change to the intent to have the flagpole there?
Yes. No. There is only the one flagpole on 11th Avenue,
Right.
when we started working on the building in 2018, there was an existing flagpole bracket there that has been restored, and the flagpole put in.
Right. So that's the only location which is to use this historic location of a pennant, a fixture.
I have two questions. One is for fellow committee members. So just using one instead of all three, the rail with the lighting on it is good. Why not painting, which is less? Is that harder to clean off the brick? Does that ruin the brick?
Because there would still be a need for penetrations for the lighting rail, which would go below it. And also it is a little bit invasive to scrub off the paint off the brick. It might affect the fire glaze on it that helps protect it against the weather.
That's what I thought. So my second comment would be, I would also consider or recommend the rails with the lighting in it so that it never comes off again. It just, the letters get changed. That would be my second.
Mike, can you hear us?
Yep. Are you calling the shots here, David?
You have your hand raised.
Okay. I've just got a question, you know, with all the many tenants you're gonna have, who gets to get that sign?
Well, the goal is this would be for the anchor tenant. So somebody who has 300,000 square feet or more, the largest tenant in the building. I mean, I can't discuss who the client is talking to, but they're talking to people who are looking at 300,000 square feet, 800,000 square feet, or even the whole building. And obviously, having that sign would be a major deciding factor potentially in the lease.
Yeah, I've
But
got
it's
you
not
on
going to be
that.
the sandwich shop on the corner.
I've got you. I've looked at the building recently, just flying by in a car. What state of completion is the project?
There were TCO inspections at the end of December. There were some objections, nothing major, all pretty routine stuff for a core and shell building. So we're aiming for TCO approval in February. So I would say, I think it's fair to say the building is substantially complete.
Thank you.
Thanks. Before we go to the motion, in terms of the three types of signage, I think it makes sense to do some sort of track with replaceable letters instead of painting, instead of the multiple letters being drilled in. I am a little bit concerned about having a track that is through bolted that applies heavy duty lighting, because I can see what will eventually grow from that is internally lit lettering, like the golden M arches from McDonald's. So you'll have a glowing yellow M on a historic building. So it almost rather that I'm in favor of recommending one option so the tenant, the building doesn't have three different options. We have all these different things. I'm in favor of putting up a track with replaceable letters, depending on the tenant, but not the one that has for through bolting, which does actually more damage than a smaller track that has less damage to the building and not have as much lighting potential to kind of protect the visuals of a historic building.
I'll just say that under what we're proposing and under, in conformance with how LPC, commonly permits lighting for signage, like it's explicitly prohibited in this proposal that there be internally illuminated lighting. So that wouldn't be something that would ever conform to the master plan.
Right, and in response to the concern about bolting all the way through, we're really more concerned about more holes through the surface, which is where the finished brick is. If there were fewer that went all the way through, I think that would actually be a benefit. The benefit of painting over the arch is that that's actually the nicest brickwork on the facade. It's what's called a rowlock, where the ends of the bricks are exposed kind of vertically, and it wraps around in this really monumental, dramatic, multi-leveled arch. And it would be a shame to make any kind of penetration in there. So I would stick with proposing painted lettering there and the flexible rail-mounted lettering above, ideally with the lighting in the rails. So, we would be making a selection of one of the many options, but also in our letter, as I would propose it, state our concerns to the Landmarks Commission to minimize the number of penetrations in case they want to consider one of the other options. At least they'll know our thrust. And I'd also like the letter to address the condition of the brick on the west elevation, to call it to their attention. So I'll now make a motion for that letter.
My hand is up.
Oh, sorry, Pamela, I didn't see you.
Okay, may I speak?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Simon just struck terror in my heart that we could wind up with this building saying Trump Bitcoin across the face of it. If that should happen, I'm leaving town. Whoever was speaking was inaudible.
That's why the mic moved. So clarification on the motion, this is a yes, approve with conditions, so that it's the language of LPC. So we'll get the conditions of one option for track lighting, one option for track lighting on the higher elevation and one option for painted over the doorway, and that's it. No, the option would be track at the higher level, painted at the archway. And it would remove from their presentation options for the tenants to either do metal block, painting, or track at the upper level. Only do track at the upper level.
Can we express a preference for the building signage over the arch rather than a tenant?
Yeah, I find the location of the blade signs inconsequential. They're not increasing the number of them. Anyone who feels otherwise should raise their hand. I think what we're talking about is painting over the arch, and it's building signage. So it identifies the building, and to the upper right of that, flexible signage mounted on rails that incorporates the lighting that can be changed. And those together are what we would recommend in this motion and in our letter.
There you go.
Is someone speaking?
So there's a motion. Did you hear the motion from Dave?
I heard the motion from Dave. I did not hear anything after that.
We have one microphone that we have to pass all the way around the room, so that's why there's a delay. So
did I
now
miss anything
there's-
important?
no, if you heard Dave, that's the last thing that happened.
Okay.
Inga seconded the motion, and now all in favor of the motion? I see Betty. Pamela, are you in favor of the motion?
My hand is up.
Oh, we can't see it.
Really? I can see it. Wow. You can't see it? Can you see me?
Yes. Is there anyone opposed? Great. Present not eligible. What's the last one? Abstain? Yeah. Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the
At
discussion.
LPC.
Sorry.
We'll see you at LPC.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Trying to figure out what might have happened because they were hearing us, just the ceiling. Can anyone hear us?
No.
You just said no. So you can hear. Can people, Betty, can you hear me? You're on mute. I can't hear you. Marty, can you hear me?
Cancel Zoom.
I can.
All right.
I
Mike,
can hear you.
okay, thank you, Betty. Pam, can you hear me?
I can hear you when you're standing right there.
Pam, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're gonna try this again. If you can't hear, please let us know.
I certainly will.
So we're gonna move on to old and new business. We are back to the committee, what we learned from our meeting with the elected officials on January 9th. Jessica hosted a pre-meeting to hear from committee members' concerns before the meeting. Everyone from this committee and HHHS was invited to that. Some people came. She also hosted a meeting to report what you will hear tonight on January 15th. You were also all invited to that meeting, and many people attended. When we made the request to meet with the electeds, Eric Botcher responded immediately, and his office set up the meeting for us. People in attendance were Eric and Carl, Tony Simone, Brad was there. Representatives from the office of Mark Levine were there, and representatives from the office of Jerry Nadler were there. Rob Gottheim was there. From CB4, Jesse was there, Jessica, myself, Greg, Joe Restuccia, and Maria Ortiz were all in attendance. Yeah, come on up. I'm gonna read to you the introductory comments that Jessica made with her permission to the elected officials when that meeting began. So these are Jessica's words. She said, "Thank you for making the time today and Eric for your immediate response to our request for this meeting. And I want to acknowledge, Eric, your past efforts in demanding routine communication and information. As you have all heard through our nearly half-dozen letters on this topic, we continue to be deeply concerned with the conditions of the FEC buildings, as well as the significant concerns we have heard about the proposed NYCHA FEC project. Residents and increasingly members of the public regularly come to CB4 meetings, even meetings not on the subject of NYCHA, to express their concerns, questions, and in some cases, significant fear over the proposed project. Through the lack of a process that has sufficiently engaged them, residents report being afraid for their homes, their families, and their futures. This is reflected in the recent petition that has over 900 signatures from NYCHA residents and in the election of a new tenant leader at Elliott Chelsea who ran on an anti-demolition platform. Renee, congratulations. Meanwhile, concerns from the non-resident community also continue to grow. Since the announcement in June 2023 that included demolition and new construction, questions have abounded. The vote that was not a vote, but a survey, now reflects a reality that might not have ever been true, that construction would be faster than renovation and cost the same. The project has now ballooned to $1.8 billion, I think actually 1.9, and is predicated on the vast redevelopment of public land for private use, with revenue expressly being committed for use by NYCHA outside of these developments, contrary to their own Build to Restore program guidelines, which aims to generate revenue for comprehensive capital renovations at adjacent NYCHA developments. As you will recall, basic questions about the survey remained shrouded in secrecy for nearly a year before NYCHA, with your help, shared the results. Questions now about financing, housing building composition, and tenants seem equally hard to pin down and have been negotiated outside of the public process. A lot has changed since the press release was issued in June 2023, and the lack of a public process has put the board in a very difficult position. We requested this meeting to hear from you because as leaders, we are bombarded with this topic, but also because members of our board have vociferously requested it. Where do you stand now on this proposal, and what do you see as the way forward for managing the lack of information and overwhelming calls of concern? So that is how the meeting began, and then we invited our elected officials to respond. I'm gonna give you some takeaways that we then Jessica read these takeaways at the meeting that she had after the meeting. And here they are. This proposal, as is, has the full approval of all of the elected officials. They know the financing and they are okay with it, which means they know that demolition is not cheaper and they are okay with it. They know the timeline, which means they know that demolition is not faster and they are okay with it. They agree that the NYCHA tenants should not be segregated from mixed income tenants. But they suggest that that will all be resolved in the Euler process. We push back saying that's too late. They agree that revenue generated from the sale of the land should stay in the community and in the FEC community particularly, but they had no plan to make sure this happens as of today, or as of that meeting. Eric mentioned that new construction should be contextual to the neighborhood, but thinks this will be settled through the Euler process. We push back saying that is too late. There is some resentment of organized opposition. that it is not necessarily tenants who are opposed, but wealthy outsiders. And they question the validity of the petition. They are not inclined to participate in a public forum. I invited them specifically to come to this meeting or any Chelsea Land Use Committee meeting. Not inclined, not denied, but not inclined. There was no one willing to place a moratorium on demolishing the as of right buildings. So to, get this more answers, a little more time and a little bit more financing in place, all the things that we've discussed here. That is the gist. That's not the gist. Those are the facts. Yeah. So we did talk about, what are our next steps, together with Joe and Maria and Jessica and Jesse. We reiterate that PACT is our way forward. We agree on that. We agreed on that coming out of the working group, and that there's no changing section 9 to section 8. We're just being changing section 9 to section 8.
You said there's no changing. There's no.
Oh, sorry. Right. There's not changing section 9 to section 8. Right. So they're more interested in information that says they should not proceed with demolition, which they do not feel that they have been provided with, but rather they've been provided with enough information that they should proceed with demolition. The last words of the meeting were that they fully agree that the process has sucked.
That's a direct quote.
Could you
repeat
that? The process is
Sucked.
Sucked.
Sucked. It's sucked.
And it should
Sucked.
suck less.
And it should suck
It should
less, and it should
suck
suck
less.
less.
Yeah,
That was the
and it should
technical
suck
term.
less. Okay, Joe, let me talk.
Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry. So I'm gonna turn it over to Greg, and these are the next steps that we discussed as a small team.
Next steps were related to gathering questions.
More questions.
More questions. It is worth noting at this point that, and those of you, the Dropbox has some recent responses to questions not related to the elected meeting, but a separate set of questions that were asked back in December that we should spend time between now and the next committee meeting thinking about. But specific to the electeds and what it is that we heard, what it is that we are thinking, we need to be aware of questions that we have not yet posed and or questions that were posed and not yet answered that we want to bring back to the electeds. That's the first piece. The second thing that the electeds did indicate, or maybe more specifically, Councilmember Botchert indicated that he would be willing to work with individuals who express an interest in some form of a conversation. I'm not going to say it a working group. That's not what was identified, but some sort of ongoing conversation of folks who are interested in this project, want to work in good faith going forward, to both respond to questions and to keep this process, however it unfolds, on track. There are some specific, again, some follow-up questions that are required of NYCHA that we are interested in learning about related to the site plan, relocation plans, et cetera. We should also note that it was during that meeting that it was identified that the master development agreement is available. It was shared. I believe that's in the Dropbox as well. And we do need to spend time between this meeting and the next time we meet to review that document so that we can have a thoughtful conversation about that document, questions, reactions to that, as well as the aforementioned responses that we received from Essence and Related, and this particular conversation with the electeds.
I will say that I do believe that Councilmember Botcher is ready to come to the table and start talking about, specific parts of this project. The roadblock, knowing now what we know, and for the record, it is the same position they took in June of 2023. So they have not shifted their position. They've been consistent. And he is absolutely willing to come to the table, but he does not want to come to the table if it's just no, right? If our position ends up being no to this project, and we are by engaging in the process, we are, implicitly saying we approve of all the pieces of the project just by engaging. This kind of goes back to, answering the draft EIS.
Yeah.
Then that, I guess, is a position that we have to decide, are we okay? Do we want to engage in the site planning and tenant protections and making sure that, and community context, or are we just saying no? Because if we're saying no, then none of them are interested in having conversations when we aren't willing to come to the table and just work together.
I guess I would amend that slightly to say. I think that's what we received during the course of that conversation. I think that's fair to say that was the sense that we got. Whether or not that's accurate or inaccurate, we would not know unless we played it out.
Yeah.
Meaning you could be taking a risk in this moment by virtue of making some choices, but you don't know exactly what the electeds would proceed to do or not.
I think as a committee, we have to decide whether we are simply going to say no, remove ourselves, do the job that we have to do, which is still, we'll get the NEPA review, we'll respond, we will have to participate in the ULURP. And that would be it. Or, we try to talk about how, are we gonna help integrate FEC tenants into this new plan? Are we going to, make sure that we have trees? Like, are we, the things that we can do? Yes.
Just very quickly, I mean, we don't have to say no to them.
Let's get you on mic,
Oh,
because
can you
we
hear
maybe
me?
have mic issues over
Can
there.
you hear me okay?
No, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Let's get the mic. Let's get the mic.
Yeah, so very quickly, we're not saying no, simple no. It's a no with a yes. So in other words, we say no to certain things that we have questions about, and we say yes to other parts which can work. So is there a way to say no demo at the same time there are other parts of the plan that can be actually put into effect and they could yield X amount of, X number of results? In other words, maybe there's a partial demo. Maybe there are few low-rise buildings that may go potentially, but preservation of most of existing Section 9 housing that may or may not remain Section 9, it may become Section 8, that we can sort of put on the table. So instead of saying no, let's put a conditional yes. Does that make sense? Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't because, there's a national sentiment now that this kind of thing is going to happen, not just here, but everywhere. And speaking about this with Jamar and other people, with the new HUD secretary about to step in, people are just talking about this happening everywhere at this point, So I think we've got to, if we want to adjust what's been given to us, you got to do it with precision, okay? Get the things that really matter. You're not going to kill demolition. That is done. It's history, right? People better get used to it because it's going to happen.
Mike, I mean, I understand, I appreciate what you're saying, but at the same time, as an architect, I actually worked on Fulton houses, particularly. Chelsea Elliott, a little bit, not as much. But I can tell you, there is potential for preserving existing buildings and adding more housing around it. There is a way to do it.
At Fulton, yeah, you might be absolutely right. It's a bigger, in a sense, in what you're talking about, I think there's a possibility there.
Right.
Elliot, no, it just ain't happening here.
Okay, I just, two things. One, going back to the original meeting with the electeds, I found it so disappointing because their position has not changed and they don't give any reason why they support it. They give no reason. They say, we support it. But why do you support it? Why haven't you changed your position with new information over the last 2 years? They stay in the same spot. I find that very disappointing. I just also want to, yes, I'd like an answer to that. Is it a real answer or you're speculating? Okay.
What they told us is the reason they support it is that that is what the FEC, the majority of the FEC tenants want, and it will create more affordable housing and more housing in general.
So they did give a reason, but they don't seem very flexible at all. And I just want to say, in terms of what we were talking about before, if we start saying we would like more trees or we would like these buildings preserved or that, does that, the behind that is we're accepting the program. We're accepting the proposal, but we want changes, which is understandable. People might say that, but also saying no, no, no also leaves us out in the middle of no place. Yeah, so we have to really consider where are we and what is our relationship to the proposal. And yes, we will have to ULURP, and we're going to do all of that. But I think the answer was ULURP is too late. You know, that's a ridiculous answer.
I continue to have concerns about the original plan had the multiple phases. There was a rehabilitation, there was partial demolition, there was demolition with replacement, and then there was, with upzoning, more units, and the deliverables to the tenants were supposedly faster. As a land use committee, I'm concerned about upzoning to allow for more market rate units or even additional affordable units. But if we're going to upzone and increase the size of the buildings, are we getting more NYCHA units as part of that mix? Are we getting additional affordable at different AMI levels? What are we as a community receiving in return for upzoning? And the struggle I had with that was the timing of not upzoning meant that NYCHA residents may have to move multiple times because they would move out of one place into a temporary place into the new place because of the timing. And I don't feel comfortable saying to NYCHA residents, lower density and lower height is better for the community, but it's harder for them because they have to move more often. So that has been my conundrum for a long time on this issue. And so I want to understand how that process is going to play out. And to that end, I would say we work as hard as we can with the elected officials to make sure that those issues are resolved and not be confrontational with the elected officials, but rather try to work with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's really discouraging that they're citing the tenant survey, which was, as you're sick of hearing me say, predicated entirely on the lie that it would cost as much to renovate as to replace. That tenant survey also did not list the time frame, which we know is as little as 2 years to get into new homes. It didn't indicate that the residents in their new buildings would have twice as many neighbors as they do now. It's almost like telling someone with a house, we'll replace your house instead of renovating it, without telling them that part of that deal is they'd have a new house in their front yard and a new one in their backyard belonging to other people. They didn't know at the time that the rezoning option that they most voted for would change zoning to reduce light and air over what is ordinarily given. There's just kind of no moral integrity in the elected officials supporting that survey, which really is screwing the residents. And, you know, this is something I prepared earlier. Sorry for reading it, but it's just a short quote, but I think it's pertinent. Last February, the New York Times published an article on elected officials banding together in support of market rate housing. It was called "They're Starting a New York Housing League, NIMBY's Not Allowed." Mark Levine provided a statement that the city, quote, needs elected leaders who are committed to fight this, to come together to support each other. Eric Batra and Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso were said to have formed a, quote, new league of officials like themselves who wanted to welcome redevelopment, including development of market rate apartments. Reynoso is quoted, "We do not want you if you're just a straight NIMBY." He has elsewhere been quoted to say, "We have a housing crisis and the character of your neighborhood is not more important than putting people in homes." It's as if our elected officials lost faith in community participation and decided to gang up on their constituents. A common response when any of them are challenged on their support of the NYCHA plan is to point out that all of the elected officials are behind it, as if that makes it right. They also cite the NYCHA residents' deplorable living conditions and the 1,000 units of affordable housing that will be created, a reference that shows they're already behind the upzoning alternative. But they never have a word of substance about the campaign of disinformation that brought us here. Chelsea will be upzoned not to rebuild Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, but to stick us with the bill for funding all of NYCHA that the federal government refuses to pay. Later, I have my own comments on the responses to our questions to NYCHA.
Thanks. I just had a quick question. So I'm trying to understand the process. So knowing that the elected officials have not changed their position, and then also I briefly read the responses from Essence, and it seems like full demo is what they're thinking and how they're moving forward. Is there even a path forward in which that does not happen? And if there is, what does that look like? And then to a question earlier about whether it should be a yes or no, I don't think it should be a yes. I do think it should be a no, but these are the things, these are the ways we still want to work to making sure that the community is being represented.
Okay, as most of you know, I'm Hector Vasquez. I'm present, not eligible to vote on the issue, but I can speak on the issue because I am a longtime tenant, formerly of Elliott Chelsea and now Fulton houses. I've lived in these houses for over 35 years now, okay? Raised 2 children on my own to some harrowing circumstances. I've been with this process since day one. And yes, it was made public. And yes, people were invited. And we had tenants from both Elliott and Chelsea and Fulton, residents that were invited. And they decided if they didn't like what they heard, they quit. And we had several of them, some of them who are the protesters now because they still don't like what they're hearing. Now, that is not people that represent the majority of the tenants. Now, I understand you guys keep bringing up this survey, but at the end of the day, demolition is what the tenants want. We want replacement of the buildings. This is an ongoing issue. Okay, right now we've had over, let's see, it's been reported recently that we've had several outages of hot water, heat, no heat, over 2,600 residences, including my own, during the holidays for over a week. No heat. Can you imagine that during the holidays? No gas. People can't cook their meals. So how can you continue to persist and not support this plan in its entirety? Because honestly, this is what the people have voted on. We want this, and enough of these delay tactics. And you will have people that are opposed, and I get that, and it's their prerogative to do that. Okay, but meanwhile, we have people that are suffering. And we're taking way too long. We're gonna basically confuse the whole issue with supposed facts and fallacies, okay? Because people do not live there. I do, and there are several here that do as well, and I respect their opinion, and I hope they respect mine. But at the end of the day, you do not live here. You go there, you visit, you take a tour, you talk to certain people that obviously are against it, and then you're convinced that, hey, it's a bad idea. So I'm really appalled, and I'm really disappointed in a lot of folks here. I really am. And no, David, you've had your say, please. You've had your say, David, please.
The folks who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Let's let people who haven't had a chance to speak. Okay. We haven't. Is there anybody on? Want to go online? We're going to go online. If anybody online wants to speak at this point, raise your hand. Let us know. Oh, so there we go. Pamela, I saw your hand up first. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, Hector. I spent 35 years in the business of managing large apartment buildings in this neighborhood. If a building I managed, if the boiler broke down, if there was no hot water, if the elevator broke down, I knew that my job was to get those things fixed. And that's called maintenance. That is not, none of the people in any of those buildings said, my boiler is broken, we need to tear this building down. Okay, it's all about taking care of what you've got. And I understand that for decades, there hasn't been the money to take care of what you've got. That does not mean that structurally those buildings deserve to be demolished. The buildings structurally are quite sound, as was reported by Related. That I think I've made my point. The other point I wanted to make is our elected officials know full well that this community board breaks its back to try to reach compromises and to try to work with the government and our officials, our elected officials. They are using that fact against us. They have formed a cabal. They are absolutely, they have said, as according to Kerry in that meeting, that they will be delighted to talk to us, but they will not talk to us if all we want to talk about is repair, not demolition. If we stand against the demolition, they're not going to talk to us. That strikes fear in all our hearts, because then we lose our place at the table. And that's a very bad place to be in. We are between a rock and a hard place, and they put us there. Thank you.
See, Mike Noble's hand is up.
Yeah. Well, to use Betty's phrase, feels like we're kicking a dead horse here again. All right. But I'm kicking the other side of the horse this time, and just inviting you all once again to trade places with me. Come and live where I live, and you'll find out the elevator doesn't work several days a week. There's no hot water just about each and every morning. Don't plan on a shower at a specific time, because it ain't happening. The heat goes off. The mailboxes here have been out of commission for 2 months. And it's taken me that much time in working with Jerry Nadler and Eric Botcher and others to finally get it resolved. NYCHA couldn't do it. They finally agreed, well, yeah, I guess we have to do it. So think about February sometime. That's one example, right? The intercom's out again. I don't even bother trying to get that fixed. The front door's out of commission. Not trying to fix that one either. It's one thing after another. NYCHA simply does not have the ability. It doesn't have the staff who can do these things, who want to do these things. They're incompetent. They're indifferent. And I am grateful that someone has come to rescue us with something that is a value to the community, value to us. So I'm real grateful that somebody stepped in. spent a lot of money. It's going to cost them $63 million, as you saw in the document, which I happen to have read throughout. I read the whole document. I promised I would. I ask you to just read the introduction, which is like about 20 pages or so. It'll give you an idea of what the MDA is all about. And there was no surprises in that document for me. It will tell you the complexity of the deal. And until you want to really start talking, facts, the nuts and bolts of it all, read the document first, okay? You cannot start talking about the details here if you don't know the facts. And don't tell me you know the facts if you haven't read that document throughout. The introduction is sort of, I said I was going to do some notes. I don't need to do notes because that introduction gives you the highlights of all the sections of the MDA with page references. So if you're worried about relocation, there's a page reference. If you're worried about ULIP, there's a page reference. It's a very good document. That introduction is, all right? But I got to tell you, Hector's disappointed. I'm getting to be bloody resentful, all right? Resentful that you were trying to deprive us of a better place to live. Hector lived here for 35 years. I've lived here for 22, all right? It's only gone downhill, all right? And for you to sit back, I know you all live in nice places. I don't live in a nice place. I look at my door camera, and you would be just shocked. You would be frightened that the characters who walk in front of my door day and night, these are, just the worst element. And this is like a magnet for these folks, all right? Whether they're homeless people, who I empathize with, or they're people coming to buy drugs somewhere in the building, right? It's the same people over and over, right? Not you can't get rid of them, the drug dealers, right? They can't get rid of the homeless people. The new buildings will have a concierge, a doorman type person, and that is the security. And to have most of the people living in one building or two buildings or four buildings, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with security there, right? So if I've got to bunch up with a bunch of other tenants, unlike I have here right now, I'm happy to do it. My safety is in numbers, right? The more people living in a single building, the easier it is to keep track of who comes and goes, right, with the doorman. I mean, that's just one of the, there's so many things. I got to tell you, I can't wait for this to happen. And so many of my neighbors, they just can't wait. They tell me every day, oh, look,
Thanks,
there's no
Mike.
hot, so there you have it. There you go.
So on the
Alright.
topic of the MDA, we would really like you, which we already talked about, and
Yeah.
Viren, we're giving homework, and Viren to go through the whole thing, and in February, bring your notes back to this meeting. In the meantime, everybody on this committee needs to read at least the introduction, if not the whole thing. So we would like to get your notes, and Viren, we'd like to get your notes on this too as an architect, and so we can understand, multiple sides of this. Okay?
Will do.
Thank
Will
you.
do.
Thank
All
you.
right.
I
All
do
right.
just want to clarify one thing. It's my opinion that the elected officials are not saying they're not going to talk to somebody who says they're against demolition. They want to what they said was they want to be negotiating in good faith. So I just want to be clear. It wasn't, I don't think it's like no one's going to talk to you if you're anti demolition. So it's really rather what is the best plan we can get to and then do it together. Maria? I'm sorry, Betty, did you have your hand raised? You had it raised and it came down. No. Maria?
Yeah. Sorry, just getting up is hard right now. So I heard what Mike Noble said, and Mike, I probably think you're right. Many of us sitting here do live in really nice places. And in fact, I live in a lottery apartment that I've lived in for probably 20 years. And prior to that, I lived at 466 West 26th Street. So I lived at Elliott. My grandmother has lived there. She passed, but she signed her lease in 1958 there and raised my mother and my aunt there, okay? And so I think, and I've been co-chair for a number of years of housing. And when I first heard about this project in 2018, it was about 2018, right, Joe? 2018, the first time I heard about this project, it was actually for complete demolition. And I remember sitting in the room, and I'm gonna be frank with you all. I remember sitting in the room with everyone else who was older than me and who was white. And I remember sitting there and thinking, you know what? I live in a really nice place. What's wrong with complete demolition? And why can't everybody who lives there have what I have? That is where I started. That is not where I am today, okay? And that is because I have been in meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting that is private, and I hear what is happening. And if you all were clear about some of the things, you probably would have a different position. And I can't imagine Hector and Mike living in a place where I don't have hot water, I don't have heat, there's always a freaking problem because I don't have it where I live. But some of what you're describing doesn't equate to demolition, right? That's just a fact, right? And we can have differing opinions, but just because I don't have hot water doesn't mean my building should be demolished, right? And so I think we need to be clear about what we're saying and not have BS arguments about why there needs to be demolition. And quite frankly, they're talking about demolition of all of the buildings and then creating, my brother, he went to Wharton on a full scholarship and he worked in housing for a while. And he said to me, oh, they're gonna destroy all of the buildings and then build 3 new projects or whatever the number of buildings is for everyone who lives in the projects to live in new ones. And it hadn't dawned on me in that way until he said it. And I was like, you know, it doesn't make sense. Like, make it make sense. And it doesn't, right? And we're talking about people. The first thing that happened in that meeting, right? Every official, every elected talked about they were in favor as the project as is. They didn't even mention issues or concerns, including the segregation, despite what Jessica had said until we brought it up, the issues. That's remarkable. That is remarkable. And it infuriates me and it gets me upset when electeds talk about, well, we're representing what they want. It wasn't 60, we were told this is what tenants want. 60% voted for that. It was actually 16% if you do the numbers, right? And it took a very long time to get those survey results that they called a vote, right? And there has been thing after thing after thing that has not been clear and they have not been transparent about, whether it's NYCHA, related essence, whatever. And I do believe there are good people, they're smart people, but they haven't been transparent about everything. And I agree with you, Hector, and Mike, who talk about there has been a lot of engagement to the tenants who live there. Yes, there has. Even Eric Botcher mentioned that, right? It's true, that's a fact. It's also a fact, we're talking about a group of people who are primarily people of color, who don't have a lot of wealth and money. And when you disenfranchise a group of people for a very long time, what happens? What happens? You know. You think you are helpless. You think you can't change anything. You think, oh, it's gonna be the way it is and I don't have a say. That's how I would feel if I still live there. If I still live there, I don't know if I'd be on the board, and that's the truth. I don't know if I would be on the board, and I would feel kind of helpless. And you all know I work at Ryan Health. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm telling you I have family there. I'm telling you I have patients who live there currently. Not one of them has said to me they are in favor of exactly what is happening here. No one in my family has said that. And me, I was the person in the beginning, I'm in favor, and I am on a different end now. And my vision is that my vision is not that we say no, but that we can go forward with this project, but not with the way as is, not as is. We cannot accept that we're gonna have, instead of a poor door, it's a whole poor tower. No, that's not acceptable. We can't do that.
Thanks, Maria.
So for many parts of my younger life, I lived without heat and hot water until I worked on buildings and got them to better shape. And the numerous buildings I've worked on throughout the neighborhood had the same situation. We didn't tear them all down. It doesn't mean that some of them were not partially torn down or really redeveloped or gutted. But I'm concerned that I have never met with our elected officials, whom I respect and many whom I know personally. I felt like I witnessed a script that was done among them. And the scariest part is there was not one bit of critical thinking. If any other developer had walked into our community and said, we don't know how many units, we don't know what's going to be built exactly, we don't know about the money being moved out of the community, and we're going to segregate all the poorest people in 4 or 5 buildings, they would be kicked out on their butt from these elected officials. So it is an odd point that we as a community board, appointed by some of those very elected officials, I think we have to break with them and just get the information out there, because I want to make a nuance, Kerry. I think I heard, not that we won't talk to anybody into demolition. What I heard is there are people who don't want anything to happen whatsoever. Those are the haters, and we don't want to work with them. Well, I agree. Our board should not ever be working with people who want no change whatsoever. Change is hard, it's painful, and we are the board that knows how to compromise. If one more time we're told that of the 59 boards, we do the best job, our elected officials are not even thinking about how to figure out a compromise and bringing everyone to the table. So I certainly suggest that we pursue a path where we have some public meetings and/or we begin to take up this idea of not a working group, but a group that discusses it with all parts of the community, the pros and the cons. The council member has said to me over and over when this started, well, we can figure out some compromise. He said it over and over, but I haven't heard him move ahead with any compromise. So, I don't know if it's the right time, but I do know, I want to say certain things that I really propose. First, our board has already taken a position that the RAD Pact idea, moving from Section 9, public housing, to the Section 8, is the path because it allows for mortgages to be put on the property and for higher rents to support those mortgages. It's done across the city. I think we should stick with that as an underlying issue. And the other thing is, it was set up to be only no demolition. If we as a community want to talk about demolition and preservation together, our elected official should step up and not be afraid to have that conversation with all of us, because it's possible, because we went through this already, and maybe we move to a different spot. But the problem is that it's either all or nothing. And I want to say to all of my colleagues here, it's not all or nothing ever. It's what we make it. And we're here because we're not disenfranchised, and our goal is to try to represent the broader parts of the community, because everyone will be affected in this, well beyond just the NYCHA tenants. And it frustrates me to holy hell when Hector will say something or Mike will say something as if the impact of the entire removal of many blocks of this community won't have an impact. We have to make it for the future, that's all.
Right. Yes, hold on one second.
Let's just talk about process for a second, because for the sake of time, it's already, 8:20. We do have public testimony that we need to make time for, and then we can come back. That said, there are committee members who haven't spoken yet. And so I think, Inga, have you spoken yet? Why don't we let you do that now, and then we'll go to public, just to give.
Thank you. I will be very brief. What both of you just said was very important. I wasn't going to say anything, and what Pam said kind of triggered something as well. I live in a very large building. We have 1,000 apartments. In the fall, a couple hundred people were without gas for about 2 months. Just over the holidays, a couple hundred people were without heat. It's maintenance. We're not tearing the building down. They're fixing things. It takes time. It's maintenance. They're not just tearing it down because we didn't have gas, we don't have heat. They got a boiler, they're working on it. They have crews there constantly, so we're getting sporadic heat now. It's maintenance. We're not tearing down a building that was built in 1929. Yeah, and our elected officials should be compromising.
Betty, you're up.
Yes, I just would like to say that I agree with Joe, and he can say it much more articulately than I can. And that's it. I agree with all the words he just spoke. Thank you.
Let's transition to public testimony at this time, and then we can come back to committee to make sure that folks have the opportunity to speak. There are 4 folks on the sign-in sheet and some online. In person first, Sarah, Lydia, then Alexa. Last is Renee. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sarah? Okay. Lydia? What you do? I'm going to give you the mic. You can do it from there because we want to make sure you're on camera. Okay.
Hi, I guess I'm one of those. I have to stay there. Okay. Yeah. Okay, my name is Lydia Andre. I live at 352 West 20th Street. I'm part of the Chelsea Neighbors Coalition, the West 20th Street Block Association, and a newly elected representative on CRDC. Okay, I guess I'm one of those outside agitators because, first of all, I want to say thank you to the CLU. It seems like I come here and I'm complaining about you, but I'm not. I'm speaking to people who aren't in this room. I am extremely grateful for everything you're doing, and I think Jessica's comments to the electeds are so important for everyone to hear, and I'm extremely grateful to them, as to Joe and Maria for their comments. I want to say that I am so sick of the fact that we do not have true representation in this district on this issue. I don't understand who Eric Botcher and the other electeds are representing in this issue. Hector, you say, people say that there was a vote by the tenants. Hey, I'd love to have a vote for the tenants. I'd love to really know what the electeds think they know about what the community wants. I don't think they're right. I don't think they're on the right side of this issue. I don't think they're representing the community's needs or being responsive to what we need to hear back from them. And I think it's a political solution. And believe me and the other outside agitators are going to work politically too, because I believe we should be represented by people who listen and respond to the community. That's happening for CLU. It's happening. CLU is responding to us, and the elected officials are not.
Thank you.
I'm Alexa. I've been living in NYCHA for a long time. I am fed up with the elected officials. I hate to say it. No disrespect if you're listening, but you guys do not look out for the community, especially the Democrats. I decided to become Republican because the Democrats are not doing anything for the community. They're taking everything away from us. And they want to make money on us, on the poor. They want to make money. And they don't care about us in 20 years that we're going to be out there in the streets. What happened to the humane society, to human beings that don't care about people that matter? We matter. We tenants matter. We pay rent. I pay rent. I don't miss no months of rent. And I struggled. I worked. And for what? For these elected officials to make money on you? And for this essence related to make money on our government? I'm fed up with them. And I think they all should be taken out of office. Thank you.
So hello, today I am representing the Elliott Chelsea Houses as its new president. As said before, I ran on an anti-demolition platform. Once again, we're having to claim our humanity. Hector, you continually say that the residents had the ability to be on this process. Incorrect. Rarely, if ever, did anyone know that the Chelsea Working Group was actually meeting. I found out by one, and that's only because I saw a video of Marnie. Other than that, nobody knew what was going on. We continue to say that we have to compromise for the electeds. We have to figure out how to get along, figure out how things are going to get done. We have a problem. They don't want it done. They want us gone. They want separate but equal, or shall I say separate and unequal. They know what they're doing. They have made a decision that we should be shoved into 3 buildings per campus and give affordable housing, except in this neighborhood, unaffordable, affordable housing and luxury housing. We have no idea what mitigation strategies. We have no idea about the community. We have no idea that the fact is you're most likely going to kill our elders as you roll them out of Chelsea Addition. There is no knowledge of what's going to happen. There has been no transparency, no truth, a total lack of democracy. Don't ask how Trump has gotten where he is. Take a look at this. This tells you everything. In the Elliott Chelsea houses, we have no room left. Honestly, we don't. But Mike, when you say Fulton does, they are not to be sacrificed as well. Really, how could you do that? You should be ashamed of yourself. Miguel, I'm sure you'll say something about that. Lovely to see you, my fellow president. One thing, I'm going to say this out loud. We are human beings. We are not to be leveraged. We are not to be sacrificed. We are not to be used for anyone, any community whatsoever. I don't know what the elected officials are so hard to just not want to talk to anyone. There has to be a reason, and we need to figure it out. This constant consensus that has been going on for years has now put our lives on the line. As Maria says, Black, Latino, Asian, women, disabled, all sorts of people from all sorts of places where we are allegedly a city that loves diversity and equity, a bold-faced lie. Republicans or Democrat, it doesn't matter. The duopoly monopoly is all the same. I'm going to say this again and continue saying this. We are not to be sacrificed. We are not to be used. We want our homes. We do not want to hear the script about deplorable conditions. As said before, when you get a nitro apartment, you get to make a decision whether to accept it or not. You accepted it. I doubt you would accept something that was deplorable conditions, especially with your children. You would never have done that. You have problems. We all have problems. Everything in this city has a problem. We do not invest in our infrastructure. We need to start to do that. As you said, if you're worried about apartments, worried about the vacant apartments, 5,000 in NYCHA. And by the way, look at NYCHA metrics. Allegedly, there are no vacant apartments in Fulton, Elliott, Chelsea, or Chelsea Addition. I just looked that up. So maybe you better tell us where people are going to live. I hope you understood this because I will continue to say it. We are human beings. We are not to be leveraged. We are not to be used for anyone. NYCHA, Essence related, the Chelsea community, the rest of NYCHA to be solvent off our backs. Thank you.
Let's go online. Miguel?
Hi. First, I'm going to start off with saying I appreciate everything that CB4 does, not only for the FEC project, for everything it does for the neighborhood. I have always said that, but I want everyone to understand. First and foremost, I want to correct Renee on what she just said, that there isn't any single vacant apartments at Fulton, Elliott, Chelsea. You're more than welcome to come with me to Fulton, and we'll do the walkthrough where you can see the vacant units that have been held for years to put the apartments together for the residents that are going to be moved into. And at Fulton houses, it's going to be 5% of the people that are going to be moved once, just one time. When the new building gets built, they get moved back into it. That's it. 5% out of 100%. Same thing goes for Elliott Chelsea. I can give you a walkthrough in your own development, Renee, of what units are vacant over there. They made sure that there's enough units of vacant apartments for the people that have to move one time. I'm not going to go tit for tat with everybody here. I would definitely appreciate to have conversations with the board, the elected officials. But through these conversations, you're not changing my mind. You're not changing the tenants' minds in Fuller and Chelsea that want this demolition to go through. Conversations are conversation, but we are going through what we need and what we want. Pam, you were the first person that told me these buildings needed to go. You and I know the truth is the truth, right? Now you change your mind. I respect you. I respect you have that ability to change your mind. But don't forget what you first told me, Miguel. They got to go. These buildings never should have been built the way they're being built. Everybody needs to be honest here. Joe, you know better than me that you don't want another working group because we took 3 years. And Renee, I don't know where you were during those 3 years because we met at Pier 33 and Elliott Chelsea and in the Hudson Gill. For 3 years straight, we sweated our butts off at those meetings. Every single person from the development had the opportunity to be part of those conversations. It's unfortunate that it changed from redevelopment to demolition, but demolition is what needs to happen at Fulton Houses. And once again, I appreciate every single board member that is speaking for and against. I understand what you go through. I'm not here to go tick for tat with you. Thank you and God bless.
Next 3 online, it's Jackie, Layla, and Salinas. So Jackie? Jackie, are you on, if you are on mute right now, you can unmute and speak. We can go to someone else and come back. All right, let's go to Layla. Let's unmute Layla. Layla.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Leila Logizico, district leader, Democratic district leader in Chelsea and concerned resident. I want to thank you all on the committee for all the work that you're doing and the really moving and inspiring comments that were made tonight. A few things that I would like to add to what was said. The first one is I submitted a fairly large number of questions in writing and others in a oral testimony that I delivered in December. And I appreciate that Essence and Related responded to some of them, but not to all of them. So I would like to get a commitment from Related and Essence that they will answer all the questions that members of the community have asked. They are important questions. And this is the segue and the point on which I really would like to emphasize. It has been incredibly difficult to get any information in a timely fashion. And it is really concerning to then realize that actually our elected officials may not be aware of what is contained in the proposal. So it seems that they have reached a consensus, and to Joe's point, it looks like they're reading from the same script, while at the same time we are realizing that this project is incredibly complex, and that maybe except Related, no one really knows what's going on. So let me tell you one thing. I really appreciate that we finally got the master development agreement. This was something that this coalition of us identified because we went to an ICHA board meeting, and this was the first time that this master development agreement was even mentioned. I actually chased Jonathan Gouveia in a corridor asking him where this master development agreement was. Okay, fast forward 2 months later, we finally got it. So I started reading it. I can't say that I read it cover to cover. I'm probably on page 80 or 90. But one thing that caught my attention, I'm going to read from it. Alterations with an aggregate cost greater than $250,000 that are not included in the approved annual budget shall require the prior written approval of the ground lessor, so that's NYCHA, which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld, conditioned, or delayed, provided that for any such alteration that also require a DOB permit or other governmental authority, or include structural work, or alter apartment unit count, apartment unit size, or apartment bedroom count, such approval may be granted at the ground lessor's sole discretion. All right, so in other words, NYCHA has the right at their sole discretion to change the unit size, the unit count, and the bedroom count. This gives me great trepidation because even what we think we know, i.e. replacement in kind, 1-for-1, 2,056 units, that's what we believe, right? That's what we've been saying. That's what the electeds have been saying. Don't you worry, replacement in kind. Well, actually, no. And what have we seen in this project? The working group said no demolition. Everybody thought it would be no demolition. Out of the blue, a year and a half later, oh, gee, we need to do demolition. So what are they going to do in a year? Are they going to tell us, oh, gee, we need to change the number of units or the size of the apartments or the number of bedrooms? There is a lack of in-depth understanding in what is going on. These contracts are not ironclad, and it seems that the tenants are always getting the short end of the stick. So I am very, very concerned with the lack of information. Once again, I have another 10 questions that I submitted in a batch of, in 2 batches that still have not been addressed, including who is guaranteeing the bonds that will be issued to build these buildings. And once again, bonds is public money. So are we, the taxpayers of New York, going to hold the purse if Related were to decide that this whole thing is not working for them? Once again, I will not belabor, just to say, I really appreciate all the work that CB4 is doing. I really appreciate that thanks to you guys, we are actually able to get information, but we're far from really understanding what is going on, and the lack of transparency from both NYCHA and Related and
Thank you,
S
Leila.
is not conducive to
Thank you,
trust.
Leila.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Salinas is up now. Salinas, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, Salinas Miranda from the Elliott Houses. A reminder and to insist that there are 2 crucial documents that must be produced to move forward on the Fulton and Elliott Chelsea proposal. 1, an independent audit that was completed for Related companies. This audit is the one that the demolition proposal is being based on, not the physical needs assessment that NYCHA listed on their website. We've all seen it. It's basic and general. We need to see the independent audit. 2, we must see the obsolescence report. The report that NYCHA is supposed to produce to prove that our buildings really are in disrepair. Why are they not making this available for public disclosure? Let's insist on seeing anything that is directly related to the demolition and to be produced with ample time for review. Renee Key is officially certified as TA president of the Elliott Chelsea Houses. Darlene Waters was never proactive in any way, shape, or form. You can testify to that. She has not been to a public CB4 meeting, held no TA meetings, and never answered tenant questions, and declined any discussions pertaining to the demolition proposal. Any closed door gatherings she had with CB4 or elected officials isn't valid. It was never a public meeting, and it's a sign of how sneaky she's been operating, handing her baton over to the Fulton leader, Miguel Acevedo. Renee will be active and transparent. For over a year, she's done door-to-door knocking and has had conversations with the tenants of both Fulton, and Elliott Chelsea. We know what the tenants want. Our petitions of 949 signatures prove it. And for the past 19 months, we've had plenty of tenants from both developments come and speak out against this proposal. Our democratic principles must be upheld. If they were insisting that this has been resident-led, now it's time they start listening to us, because Renee is a true representation of what the FEC community wants regarding the demolition proposal, which has been merged as one. We've done outreach at both developments and stand in representation against the Fulton and Elliott Chelsea demolition. The same way Fulton TA leader Miguel Acevedo spoke for both, because NYCHA allowed two developments to be lumped together as one, we will also continue to advocate against the demolition as it has been proposed. FEC tenants against demolition will continue to fight off the beast that is related. And this letter in response to CB4, where nothing is relevant to the demolition, was signed by people who are not professionals in the field. The CB4 letter has questions that were left unanswered. That letter is unacceptable, and we must insist on getting direct responses. However, Jamar, Greg, and Jonathan did admit that our FEC buildings have no significant structural defects. Shame on every single body that is pushing for this proposal without revising any sort of document and having any concrete evidence. Take care of the community and do affordable housing at Hudson Rail Yards, not casinos. Hector, your arguments are always the same. You can't give valid reasons for demolition. Mike
Salinas,
Noble, yes?
For time, if you could wrap up, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'm almost done. Mike Nobles, apply for lottery housing and move into a related building, or keep on kicking the dead horse. Our buildings are not coming down. Thank you.
Thank you, Salinas. Jackie, if you unmute, you can go.
Hi, Jackie, from Fulton Houses. I'm so I'm disgusted because, I voted for these elected officials to come in. And I'm sure the community where I live as well asked me, who should we vote for? And I will let them know, Eric Botcher or Mark Levine, because I'm a Democrat, right? So I automatically vote for these guys. And I just can't believe the way they're just turning their back on us, Number two, it's your prerogative if you want to live in Fulton and Chelsea, you guys could go move somewhere and related buildings. You don't actually have to stay here. Now, I just noticed that they're doing a little chipping of paint and plastering and little minor jobs. That doesn't mean anything. What they should really get to is just fixing the plumbing so we could have, maintain the plumbing for people to get the heat and put in some new elevators, And that's all we need is some maintenance here. These buildings are not falling apart, because if they were falling apart, we would be evacuated from these buildings. And, we have plenty of cameras. I mean, Mike is saying about the drug dealers, about homeless, about this and that. Where's security? Where's the cameras? I mean, somebody has to enforce the law in these buildings. You're just letting them do what they want because you want the demolition. But, I'm standing here and I'm telling you, we're not getting a demolition. And we don't want the demolition, and the residents do not want the demolition. Thank you.
I see Milagros Lugo.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Milagros, and I've been living in Elliott, Chelsea near all my life. I raised my two boys, which they are both handsome and successful. They have jobs and finished school here. My mother, she is now disabled, and she's blind. She's 80 years old. I am a construction painter. I've been in construction for the last 20 years. And as you say, thank you for Maria. Thank you, Pam, that and thank you, Salinas and Renee. Thank you for everything that you've said. These buildings are sound and strong. We just need a nice little lick of paint, some nice elevators. What happened to the maintenance? Let's get back to NYCHA. Where can I, as a resident, let's get back to NYCHA, bring in NYCHA into doing what they have to do instead of signing us off into these private entities. Once you get a private corporation in the door as what they're in already, they're going to take over. They're not for us. We're not a number. I'm not apartment 6B as in boy. Okay, we are human souls here. You're not going to throw me or my family out like trash. And my apartment is fine. I would like for anyone to come knock on my door. I just found out tonight that this been in proposal since 2018. We're in 2025. And guess what, people? I have still had not anyone knock on my door and show me anything. Okay, that's all I want to say. No demolition, let's fix housing, let's save Section 9, and let's just keep it going. Let's just keep it going. If there's anybody that needs a fresh lick of paint in their apartment, listen, I'll paint your apartment for free. How about that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Milagros. Do we have anybody else online? We need to, this ends the public testimony piece. We have 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. And as you know, at 9 o'clock, the power goes out. So we do need to wind up. I just want to say one or two things before we move into the next section, because there are a couple other items that this committee needs to be focused on. And we do need to talk about that. But I just want to remind us, this segment of this committee meeting started with what we heard from the elected officials. And there have been a number of questions asked of the elected officials for a long time, like there had been a lot of questions asked of NYCHA, Essence, and Related for a long time. And while there is a great deal of frustration about how it is and why it is that we can't get answers or haven't gotten answers, or it takes so long to get the answers, I think it is certainly within reason, even if it is frustrating, to ask questions and to understand what is happening and how it's happening. That said, as I was taught very long ago in the human services space, if you don't live in NYCHA, you don't understand NYCHA, and I respect that. At the same time, let us remind ourselves, we are the Land Use Committee, and we have a responsibility to understand how it is that this work is happening and taking place. To those of you part of this committee that are unsure, there are multiple letters, there's an MDA, there is a Dropbox filled with content that answers some questions, doesn't answer all. If you are in this particular conversation amongst us and you are feeling frustrated, anxious about what the right answer is, it is not likely that there is one. But I would expect that for us, the important part is that we maintain a level of respect amongst each other as we move towards seeking some sort of next step in this process, given how this started, this conversation, with our elected officials who presented to us what they think. On that note, I'm going to pass the mic to you, Carrie, and you can let us know about two additional items I think that require attention for this committee to dig in on. And I will just remind us as well, in the Dropbox is the MDA, are the most recent letters from Essence and Related. And I appreciate the intensity and focus and knowledge and insight in this room and online. It's my hope that we can continue to move forward in this project and any project with respect and appreciation for that effort, even if it is painful all along the way.
Thanks. Just a couple of things that I heard, and I want everyone to know. We obviously got the responses back from multiple months of questions from the development team today, Friday afternoon. But so we have to go through those. We have to add to those, and keep pressing for our questions to be answered. So I heard that from many people that there are still questions that are outstanding, and you're going to find after you read those, there are still questions that are outstanding. So we'll continue to try to hunt them down. And we did meet as again, the co-chairs of both committees, and Jessica and Jesse with Hudson Guild that we wanted to report out with Ken Jockers. It was a great meeting. We'll continue to engage with them. I will give you more on what they had to say. They are meeting regularly with the development team as the development team put forward to us. So that is true. They also remain confused, feel like they're not getting a ton of information, are not really sure where they stand on the details, and have some specific asks that we might be able to help them with. So that might be worthy of a letter that we put forward, or you guys take up in HHHS and put forward next month. And then really importantly, we do have other business. We have a Midtown South mixed use development ULURP coming up. What? And with another committee, with our other, what? No, I'm not taking it. Clinton Hills Kitchen land use because of scheduling, thank God, from the DCP. That is going to, they'll give one presentation per board, as you know, not unusual. So it's going to go to Paul and JD, because that's the only time that DCP could make it, is at their meeting. Everybody needs to go. Everybody needs to go be there in person, be there online. It doesn't matter. You need to be there. This is both committees. There will be a ULURP, and they need to hear all of our questions and, you know, all of our feelings, and we will help. We can assign people to parts of the ULURP if you'd like. We can help you, because we're going to start doing more of that too. More people, more involved, more homework. Sorry, guys. And finally, we got a letter today from DSNY about former colored school number 4. It's in the Dropbox. Honestly, I have not had a minute to look at it. But we do know that we're going to be having a briefing sometime between now and our February meeting. There is some progress or movement on what they want to do with the building. They're going to come back to us with an LPC application, so that will be interesting. We will invite whoever's interested to that briefing, and it's 8:54. Is there a motion? I think this was a great conversation, and we should, you know, we didn't expect, we were hoping not to actually sort of have any kind of resolution or letter or anything. It's a report out. It's a conversation. We want to hear from people. The MDA, everybody again needs to read the introduction at least before February, which is plenty of time, and hopefully the whole thing. It's not an easy document to look at. Mike and Viren, thank you for coming back with notes for our February meeting. We will make time for that. And everyone should read the letters. Yeah, we're going to report on Hudson Guild. We're going to talk about the MDA. Yes. And then we'll probably respond with a letter. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.